pure monopoly. So here we're going to be looking at the other extreme. On the one hand, we have a pure competition market structure. Here, what I'm going to be talking about is a market structure called pure monopoly, and it is the other extreme. Whereas in pure competition, you have many firms competing. In a pure monopoly market structure, you only have one firm. In other words, the firm is the market and the market is the firm. Unlike in pure competition, where all of the firms are price takers, they take the price from the market. In a pure monopoly market structure, the firm, the only firm in a market, is the price maker. Let's assume that we initially have or are a pure competition market structure, and that we become a pure monopoly market structure. So we're going from pure competition, where there are many firms and many consumers, to a market structure which is a pure monopoly market structure, where there's only one company and obviously there are consumers. So let's draw this. Here on the left side, I'll label this as, that's too thick, excuse me, let me erase that. Okay. So here on the left side, we'll have a pure competition market. All right. So, as I've said previously, in a pure competition market structure, we have, well, we would label this as P, this is Q, and once again, in a pure competition market structure, we have many consumers, such that no single consumer can significantly affect the market price. In a pure competition market structure, we also have many firms. How many is many? So many such that no single firm can significantly affect the market price. So how does a pure competition market set its price? Through the interaction of the many firms and the many consumers, which will derive this PC. P for price and C for pure competition. So PC is the pure competition market price. And this would be QC. Q quantity, C pure competition, meaning that all of the firms in a pure competition market structure, they produce the entirety of QC. Now I'm going to switch colors, and what's going to happen now is this conversion. Given a basic assumption of pure competition, which is easy entry, an outside company, enters this pure competition market structure, and over a period of time, using different methods, this pure competition market structure becomes a pure monopoly market structure. So in essence, this is not only a pure monopoly market structure, this is also a pure monopoly firm, because the market is the firm and the firm is the market. So in pure monopoly analysis, we only need one diagram, which represents both the firm, the pure monopoly firm, and the pure monopoly market. Again, they're the same diagram. Okay, so that same diagram, which initially represented the pure competition market structure, now represents a pure monopoly market structure. Well, the market is the firm, and the firm is the market. So how do we draw it? We draw it like this. Pure monopoly PM, pure monopoly market slash firm, because they are identical, right? Again, the market is the firm and the firm is the market. And here we have the per unit values, including price. And here we have the quantity. So this demand represents the consumers, and this supply curve, well, that represents the supply curve of the pure monopoly market or firm. All right. So, okay. I mean, in a pure competition setting, we would refer to this as equilibrium, which would derive the market price, and it would communicate this price to all of the member companies in a pure competition market structure. And this is how individual firms would derive their individual quantities. But for our purposes, since we are a pure monopoly market, a pure monopoly firm, the question is, how does a pure monopoly firm determine its profit maximization, loss minimization price, and profit maximization, loss minimization quantity? Question, question. Answer: through MR equals to MC. And this is where we're going to turn our attention towards. How does a pure monopoly firm derive its profit maximization, loss minimization, price, and quantity? Again, by utilizing MR equals MC. So it is inaccurate. It is inaccurate to say that a pure monopoly firm can set any price that it wants to. That is a total fallacy. So get rid of it. In applying the profit maximization, loss minimization point, MR equals MC, to pure monopoly, we have to analyze, explain what exactly is MC equals S. Well, let's see. Here we draw a pure monopoly market or firm. Which looks like this again. All right, that's where the price goes. That's where the per unit costs go. And this is where the quantity goes. So we're talking about what under pure competition was considered S. Well, it was considered S because we were looking at the entire pure competition market. But you realize what happened. The market, the pure competition market, was taken over by a single firm. So the market, formerly a pure competition market, was taken over completely by a single firm, which in essence means that the market is now a pure monopoly firm. So that supply curve, although it's still referred to as S, is identical to marginal cost. In other words, S, the supply curve, what was formerly known in a pure competition market setting as supply, in a pure monopoly firm setting is known as marginal cost. So marginal cost is equal to supply. So what I want to do now is deal with the MR line. All right. We'll do it two different ways. First, the calculus explanation, and the second way, the non-calculus way. So let's start with the calculus explanation. All right. But first, let's put together a diagram. Okay. So here we are. Price goes here. Quantity on the x-axis, and the demand line. So what do we notice about the demand line? Well, it intersects the y-axis, the price axis at A, and you remember A is the prohibitive price. We use the name for that. We call that the choke price. That's the demand choke price. Another thing about this demand line, this is a linear model. That's why I'm referring to it as a demand line. And the other thing is that the slope is negative. Let's call it negative b. Okay. The implied coefficient there is -1. All right. So we have the demand choke price, which is A, which is the start of the demand line. And we have the slope of the demand line, which is negative b, which means that the implied coefficient of that slope is negative 1. Okay, now I want to state that demand curve in an equation form. And there are two ways to state it. I can state it in terms of P, price, or Q, quantity. I choose to state it in the price form. So let's put a marking here. This is the demand equation. Okay? So the demand equation, utilizing this terminology, is the following. Price is equal to A minus BQ. So what's P? Price. What is A? That's the demand choke price. What is negative B? That's the slope of the demand line. And what is Q? That's quantity. Now we're aiming towards marginal revenue. We want to know what it looks like graphically. But we're going to get the answer from the math, from calculus. So before getting to MR, we have to calculate TR. So TR is equal to price times quantity. Further down the line, TR is equal to, well, what's price? Do we have price? Yes, we do. Price is A minus BQ. And quantity. So total revenue is equal to A minus BQ, which is price, times quantity. And to go further, TR is equal to AQ minus BQ squared. Okay, so that's the TR equation. Next comes the derivation. We're using the first derivative, or the partial derivative of TR in relation to D. So marginal revenue is the first derivative or partial derivative of TR, total revenue, in relation to quantity. So when we derive TR in relation to Q, we get A minus 2BQ. Now I'm going to switch colors and make a comparison. So what are we doing? We're comparing this equation, which is the demand equation, with this equation, which is the marginal revenue equation. And what do we notice? Well, if we look at the demand equation, we notice that the demand line starts at A, which is the demand choke price. And what do we notice about the marginal revenue equation? It also starts at A, doesn't it? Which is right here, which is the demand choke price. And what do we notice about the slope of the demand equation? We notice that the slope of the demand equation is -1, which is the implied coefficient of -b. And what do we notice about the slope of the marginal revenue line? We notice that it's -2, is half the distance. So if we compare these two equations, well, what's our conclusion? Our conclusion is that the marginal revenue line starts at A, which is the demand choke price, and it intersects the quantity line. In other words, it intersects this distance from here to here in half. Why in half? Because the slope is half, isn't it? So marginal revenue will be positioned right there. This is marginal revenue. This distance here equaling to this distance here because of this, because of the relationship of the two slopes. So from now on, how are you going to draw the marginal revenue line? You're going to draw it in this fashion. Given linear models, the marginal revenue line cuts this distance from here to here, always in half. Okay, now I'm going to explain the shape of the marginal revenue line in relation to demand in a non-calculus way, in a non-calculus explanation. Okay, for that I'm going to put together a PQ demand schedule. All right, and to go further, if we multiply P times Q, we get TR, and we derive MR from TR. Okay, got to do this carefully. Let's say this is 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 5, 4, 3, and then the last one will be 2. All right, so unlike in pure competition where the price is constant, in pure monopoly and other markets which are not pure competition, the price will vary. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay? Now, these two columns together are known as the demand schedule, and together, if we plot P and Q, we will be able to plot the shape of the demand line, which is negatively sloped, right? Because you see price dropping and quantity increasing. That is the law of demand, isn't it? It's a negative relationship or inverse relationship between price and quantity. Next step, if we multiply P times Q, we get TR. So 9 times 1 is 9. 8 times 2 is 16. 7 times 3 is 21. 6 times 4 is 24. 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times 6 is 24. 3 times 7 is 21. And 2 times 8 is 16. Did I get everything right here? It looks correct. Okay. All right. Now, marginal revenue. Again, what's the equation for marginal revenue? Marginal revenue is equal to the change in TR divided by the change in quantity. Another way put, TR2 minus TR1 divided by Q2 minus Q1. So, when the first unit is, well, let's say we start at 1, right? And we're selling the second unit. So total revenue changes from 9 to 16. 9 to 16, so marginal revenue is 7. And then the third unit. So we go from 16 to 21. That's 5. And then from 21 to 24. That's 3. And then from 24 to 25. That's 1. And then from 25 to 24, that's negative 1. Yes, marginal revenue may become negative. And then from 24 to 21, and that's negative 3. And finally, negative 5. Okay, now, why don't we graph all of this? All right? So, here we have our firm. Okay, definitely not a pure competition firm, because in a pure competition firm, you remember price would have been equal to marginal revenue, because price in pure competition is constant. Well, not in this case. This is not a pure competition market structure. So our firm would look like this. So, looking at the first two columns, the P column and the Q column, which are referred to as the demand schedule, we notice that there's a negative relationship between P and Q. So how do we draw it? We draw demand like this. It's negatively sloped. And what do we notice about marginal revenue? What we notice about marginal revenue is that it is negatively sloped. And how would it look like? Is it above or below demand? It's below demand. And how does it look like? It would look like this. This would be marginal revenue. I didn't draw it that symmetrically, did I? Sorry about that. This part from here to here should equal to this part from here to here. Okay, so let's go back to the very beginning, in fact, where we had a pure competition market diagram, right? And how did this diagram look like? Well, price here, quantity here, demand, negatively sloped, supply, positively sloped, equilibrium, and how does a pure competition market structure derive its price? By using equilibrium. So this is P, C. P for price and C for pure competition. That's the market clearing price. That's the equilibrium price, which applies to all of the firms in this pure competition market structure. And here we have QC. This is how much the entire market will produce. All of the firms, all of the pure competition firms will produce this amount, QC. Q for quantity, and C for pure competition. All right, now what happens? What happens is that we have an entry, because one of the major characteristics of pure competition is easy entry. So a company comes into the market, and over a period of time, the single company swallows up the entire market. So what initially constituted many firms, making it a pure competition market structure, has now become a pure monopoly market structure with a single pure monopoly company. So this is no longer a pure competition market. This is now a pure monopoly market. And in fact, this single diagram, the single market, is not only the pure monopoly market, it is also the pure monopoly firm. Which means that we only need to work with one diagram. This single diagram represents simultaneously the pure monopoly market and the pure monopoly firm. So what do we want to know? Well, we want to know what price the pure monopoly firm will charge, and will it be higher or lower than the pure competition price. And we also want to know what quantity the pure monopoly firm, the pure monopoly market, will produce, and whether that quantity is higher or lower than the pure competition quantity. So what do we need to do firstly to determine P and Q for our pure monopoly firm? We need to get at MR equals MC. Well, one of the conclusions was that the supply curve is equal to marginal cost curve. They're one and the same. And what we need to do now is figure out where MR is, marginal revenue. Well, that's a no-brainer. What's the relationship between D, the demand line, and MR, the marginal revenue line, in a linear model? Well, they both start at a certain point, which is right here. That's the prohibitive price, also known as the demand choke price. And what else do we know? Well, we know that the relationship between D and MR is that it's half of the slope of demand, isn't it? So the marginal revenue line starts right here at the demand choke price. It goes down, whoops, and it, whoops, well, that's pretty bad, folks. I'm sorry, right there. Okay, that's that's marginal revenue. That's the marginal revenue line. In essence, it means that this segment from 0 to this point here is equal to this segment from this point here to the demand line intersect of the x-axis. Okay, so what we have now is the MR equals MC point, which is right here. That's the profit maximization, loss minimization point. Marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So that's going to tell us that our company, the pure monopoly company, is going to produce QM. So what's QM? Q for quantity and M for pure monopoly. All right. Okay. How do we get the price? Well, we take the quantity line and we extend it onto the demand line, because it's the demand line that tells us all about price. So the quantity line, the QM line, intersects demand at this point here, and then we read it on the y-axis. So this is PM. P for price and M for pure monopoly. All right? So the two conclusions are the monopoly price is higher and monopolies produce less. Okay, so now let me redraw it in a neater way. PC market, that was the origin. Okay, price goes here, quantity goes here, demand negatively sloped. This is the demand choke price, you remember? So this is the demand line, D. This is the supply line. These are pure competition market assumptions. This is equilibrium. This is the equilibrium PC price. P for price, C for pure competition. This is the pure competition market price. And this is QC. This is how much the entire pure competition market will produce. QC. Q for quantity and C for pure competition. All right. When the conversion from pure competition to pure monopoly occurs, we would no longer label this as the PC market, obviously. We would label it as the PM market, pure monopoly market. And once again, this diagram, this diagram, which is no longer a pure competition market diagram, represents simultaneously at the same time the market, the pure monopoly market, and the pure monopoly firm. It's the same diagram. So now we have to search out MR equals to MC. So what do we know about the supply curve? It's equal to, it's identical to the marginal cost curve. And what do we know about the marginal revenue line? Well, it starts at the demand choke price right here, and it cuts the distance from 0 to this point here, the D line intersect in two equal parts. So let's assume that it's here somewhere. So this would be the shape of the marginal revenue line. All right. So what have we just identified? We have identified this point here, which is the profit maximization, loss minimization point. Marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So how much will the pure monopoly firm produce? It'll produce this much, QM, which is a lower quantity than a pure competition market structure. What price will the pure monopoly firm charge? It'll charge a higher price. So how do we figure that one out? We take the quantity line, the QM line, we extend it up to where it hits the demand, which is right here, and we read it on the y-axis. So this is PM. P for price and M for pure monopoly. And as you see, the pure monopoly firm charges a higher price. Okay. Go to BCom for assignment Zeta and for the extra credit assignment.